And I can't talk right now. We're filming.
Sorry,
I needed to call her back. She called me earlier and I haven't. I've been really I've been busy, but I've been very I could only focus on one thing at a time.
Maybe we should do something else for coverage just in case this is an actual emergency and we were just dicks about it.
I've set myself up for total and utter failure because I'm really excited. And I don't think this is going to go the way that I think it's going to.
Okay.
So.
Do you think I'm going to hate it?
I think you're going to be indifferent.
Okay.
That's almost worse.
Okay.
But
I think I'm going to feel about it like we just talked about earlier. I think I'm going to feel about it the way that I felt about Spinal Tap and the way that I felt about Rocky Horror. I feel like I'm going to just be like, I've seen all these jokes already.
Maybe. We'll see. So. Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show, your twice-weekly pop culture podcast where we talk about movies, TV, music, and more. And as always, this is a spoiler show, so you have been warned. On today's episode, we are going to... I can't imagine this is going to be a long episode, because for starters, we're not even sure how much Kristin is going to like the topic, but also it's not really a movie to be analyzed. It very quickly dissolves into people just sort of quoting their favorite jokes.
I don't want to do that.
No, but I want to see. I want to see what this could be like, what this would be like. But we're going to be watching I did not look up the 1980 film Airplane. Like the late 70s, there were a lot of disaster movies. And so the movie is famously sort of like a parody of one called Airport, I think it was called Airport 70 something, or maybe just even Airport. I'm not entirely sure. But what I found in my research is that it's actually a remake of a movie called 0 Hour.
Oh.
Today, the film is best known for its 0 Hour. This is 0 Hour. Today, the film is best known for its 1980 film parodical.
Oh.
Parodical? Parody remake Airplane, which uses entire parts of the original screenplay almost verbatim.
Oh.
And so that makes it more interesting. And I'm only now remembering that when we sat down to do this, I was going to propose watching 0 Hour and then watching Airplane. I don't know if you have, this is in real time. Is that something you don't want to do that? So there are videos on YouTube that kind of show side by sides.
Oh, okay.
So maybe after we watch the movie, we'll watch one of these videos.
I don't want to watch a whole other movie that was bad enough that they took the same dialogue and made it hilarious.
It has a 48 on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's too low for a 70s movie for me to try.
But the plot is the same, the lines are the same, the names, and I was astonished at how much it is a remake. Just with jokes in it. And I do think it adds a layer to the movie.
Yeah.
The fact that it's so weird, the fact that it's so esoteric, I think makes it so funny. But I was introduced to this movie as a young person. My dad liked kind of screwball, farcical parody movies and stuff. So we were watching Mel Brooks way too early. 8, 9, 10 years old, we were watching.
That's a little young.
For Blazing Saddles, and not so much Robin Hood Men in Tights, but we were watching all of that, and Naked Gun. Those are good too. Although there's 3, there might be 4 of them to be honest, but they're all good and or bad, but nobody likes all of them.
Oh, okay. You have a finite amount of Leslie Nielsen you can make me watch.
Oh, well, then you'll love him. And his role in this is he's shockingly the straight man.
Okay. I'm just telling you, he is not my bad baby.
Love Leslie Nielsen. You don't want to watch him and Priscilla Presley in a film noir, maybe? How about the line where she's on a ladder and he's holding it for her and he looks up and goes, "Nice beaver." Oh. And then she hands him a taxidermied beaver.
I mean,
look at you laughing. So So all I'm saying is that this worked wonders for us when we were kids. Like, this was a middle school boys sleepover paradise.
That makes sense. That checks out.
And I think you will find it funny. And even if you don't like it, I think you will be glad that you saw it. I think it'll be a, like, pop culture blind spot. Yes, it's
definitely a blind spot that I should fill in. I feel like I have a sense of humor, and I feel like I have a good sense of humor, but not everything.
Are you drinking?
Tickles me. I have not had drinks yet. I can pour myself a drink if that will make you more comfortable.
It's just silly, and I think you will think it's funny. But we'll see. I'm sweating. I'm so nervous.
It's not that serious. You've hated so many movies I made you watch.
Yeah, but it's different.
No, it's not.
No, I care more.
No, you don't.
Okay, well, let's get to this. I
feel like you're going to throw up.
No, I'm fine.
So nervous.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, we'll be right back.
The most incredible adventure the screen has ever created.
He's coming right at us!
The big news is... Airplane.
Can't remember if you said this to me or while we were recording, but you were like, it's one of those that's like an hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And then, although it does feel a little longer, I'll admit that.
So there's a couple things happening. I'm tired. I also started drinking gin. So
I thought that would help. Did it?
In a weird twist, it made me sleepier today than it usually does. So I'm a little sleepy. Okay. I thought it was funny.
Okay.
I don't want to watch it again.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it's going to go in my rotation. It's very similar to me. I think it was funnier because I think it's more broad. Mm-hmm. So I liked it more than I liked Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
But it still is like, I've watched these movies once and I think I'm good.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to turn into the type of thing where I'm just like, I can't get enough.
No. I don't think that there's any capacity or any reason why it would go in your rotation. However, I think if presented an opportunity, you should watch it again, because I think it is one of the things where two factors. I think it is funnier on repeat viewings.
Well, it's one of those things that it's so dense, it's so joke dense that it's like, it's hard not to notice more things every time you watch it.
It wasn't because the two people talking, the speaker, the man and the woman talking over the speakers in the beginning. Yes. It wasn't until the word abortion that you were like, "Whoa!" I was not paying attention to this back and forth.
Well, no, it was before the abortion one, because they went twice, and it was like at the beginning it was like, "Do not park in the red zone. The red zone is only for blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay, funny, blah blah blah." And then it kept going, but it's like, just like when you're at the actual airport, those announcements just turn into white noise after you hear them the first time. It's the type of thing where it's like, if anybody was ever trying to page me in a public place, I would I would never get the page. So it was, I think, along the lines of, it was the second exchange, though, that they had, where it was like, I just don't know what you want from me, Victor. And it's just like...
There's never stopping in a white zone.
Don't tell me which zone is for stopping and which zone is for loading.
Listen, Betty, don't start up with your white zone shit again.
We both know what this is about.
Yeah, we both know what this is about. And then it went to the abortion place, and I was like, oh, God.
This movie takes place in a real sweet spot that is the year 1980, where you can get away with more than you should.
Yeah.
And it's debatable whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. Because I think that I think this movie is 95% harmless.
Sure.
There's stuff that it's like, watching it, you're kind of like, ooh. But it's not, I think it manages, and I think this is one of the reasons why it is as classic and timeless as it is, well, say some like early Trey Parker and Matt Stone, you give it 10 years and it's wildly offensive. Like, not even funny. Where this is still funny. Like, it deals heavily in stereotypes and cliches and stuff, but they're in ways that it feels above the belt somehow.
It's mostly gentle.
Yeah.
It's like, the guy speaking jive is like,
the tribes people. You were like, oh boy.
The tribes people was tough. The guy speaking jive, I can like. That's like a
especially bringing 70s. In Barbara Billingsley.
Can I get you something?
She mofo butter laying me to the bone, jacking me up. Tight me.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Cuddy say can't hang.
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive.
Oh, good.
He said that he's in great pain and he wants to know if you can help him.
All right, would you tell him to just relax and I'll be back as soon as I can with some medicine.
Just hang loose, blood. She's gonna catch up on the rebound on the med side.
What it is, Big Mama? My mama raised no dummies. I duck a rap.
Cut me some slack, Jack.
Say Cuddy ain't say we say be doing everything.
Chump don't wanna help, Chump don't get the help.
Say can't hang, say 7 Up.
Jive ass dude don't got no brains anyhow.
And that's like a 70s thing that like I get that or whatever, but it was like the tribes people, and then it was like
but they felt in on the joke, and I think that's the thing when you're going to be skewering a group of people is they need to be laughing with you and not at you. Yeah. Where it's like, you know, speaking on behalf of, you know, Black people, the conversations I have, I would assume that the average Black audience would also find that funny.
Sure. But it was like when it got to like the Israeli airplane that had like
it just had like the Jewish
like Hasidic Jew curls, and I just like I don't know. It's
I think that one was pretty gentle too. You were like, whoa, and I was like,
just kind of feels inappropriate.
I don't know. I think there's so much of it that feels, like I said, it keeps it above the belt. And I think, because we've already thrown down the word abortion, which is a doozy of a word. And there is, I hate to say this, but I think it's my favorite joke, like running, one of 5 of my favorite running jokes. And it's Captain Over with the boy, with Timmy.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's tough.
You ever been in a cockpit before?
No, sir. I've never been up in a plane before.
You ever seen a grown man naked? Joey, you ever hang around the gymnasium? Joey, you like movies about gladiators?
But although, and then we did watch part of that YouTube
we watched part of 0 Hour.
About 0 Hour, and that was like very sketchy. Have you ever been in a cockpit before, son? And it's just like, ugh.
Well, it kind of, because when it's happening, I think it gives a context or a precedent for the joke, because in that point you realize that it's sort of parodying the first,
of course,
the vibe of 0 Hour.
Yeah.
But it just, and my only critique with that is he goes the hardest with, have you ever seen a grown man naked first? We don't build to that.
Yeah.
I think we needed to start with gladiator movies and then build.
Gladiator movies is good, although Turkish prison is pretty tough too. Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? That's...
Everyone else is so oblivious because it's happening with 4 other people in the room.
Well, Julie Hagerty almost seems like she's trying to get the boy away after the have you ever seen a grown man naked? But then he's just like, he's fine, leave him here. And I was like, don't leave him there.
It's mostly harmless. And there are, like, as we mentioned, several jokes that probably wouldn't be made today. Mm. I think the fact that it was made in the 80s sort of hand waves the rest of the issue.
Yeah.
I mentioned off camera, but I was like, oh, by the way, this is one of those PG movies that has like slurs and tasteful nudity. Like,
that's not tasteful. That is just bare tits.
Harmless.
In the screen.
Jiggly boobies, I think, are harmless.
It's fine. It's not tasteful.
It's not tasteful. It's not. But harmless. And
harmless works. I'll allow harmless.
Because this movie's rated PG and you couldn't even play it on YouTube. Like,
no.
And I think sometimes our standard, like, you couldn't even show like the rack of magazines.
Okay, what was the one called that I didn't
like Box Out or something?
No, it was Box Lunch. It's just like a tough name for a nudie magazine.
Porno mag.
Because there was one that was like Dominant Femmes, and I was like, that's fine.
Box Lunch, you weren't a fan.
That was bad.
Actually, something that surprised me about it, and I only noticed it on this viewing, and I think it might be one of the reasons why I did like it as a child, is there is not only a female presence, but like a wealth of female roles and characters.
There definitely
are. And women get jokes, like some of the best jokes.
Yeah.
Because you would think a juvenile parody like this from 1980 would have Julie Hagerty and maybe the second stewardess.
Sure.
like that would be it.
But we do we have got the first guy or the first lady that the main guy is sitting next to. Who?
Well, there's like 3 different old ladies.
Yeah.
There's there's the wife where I've never understood that Jim never has a second cup of coffee at home. Is that a reference to something, or is it just
I don't know.
A neuroses?
It might just be neuroses, but I just think it's sort of. It must just be one of those things where it's like, well, if he does this when I'm not there, what else is he doing? Like,
Why?
Jim never vomits at home. It's just very good.
I think that's why I like abstract humor so much, is because it forces you to suddenly and briefly.
You have to like embody this character,
the rich inner life of this
person.
Character. And it only lasts for a few seconds, but no, I really do. I really do enjoy it. When I said I think you should watch it again if presented with an opportunity to.
Yeah.
And I think you should see it with an audience of people who already like.
I mean, if they play it at Denzian, I'll go.
Because I think if you were in a room full of energetic people who are very passionate to be there, I think a lot of it would rub off more. And because the other thing is, I also recently watched this. I've watched this like twice this year because Andrew put it on.
Okay.
And so we were laughing more when we watched it in July because we hadn't seen it in years.
Sure.
And this viewing, I was like, I saw this 3 months ago.
Sure.
Because I think there is a timeless quality. And I think that's one of the reasons why timeless and accessible, because I think that's one of the reasons why it feels more broad than something like Monty Python or Spinal Tap or what have you, because it's on all kinds of lists of like the greatest comedies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm glad you mentioned the like density of jokes because I read a ranking and I think the consensus is that there's like 120 jokes in this, which is essentially a joke a minute.
Yeah. It feels like they were coming faster than that because a lot of them are like visual.
Well, and some of them are also repetitive. So it's like the drinking problem. You thought they over-relied on that one.
I know you were like, well, this is only the 3rd time. And I'm like, I get it. But it's like, it feels like a half-baked SNL skit where it's like, it's not, because he's got a drinking problem, but he's just like dumping liquids on his face.
He can't drink.
Yeah, I get it. It's not for me. That one was the one that I didn't like the most, I think. Because I think if it had only been a one-off, I would have been like, oh, that's silly.
That's
but
clever.
They kept coming back to it, and I was like, you're not as funny as you think you are.
That is why, because they weren't ever hitting it. Like, he wasn't talking about it. We would just cut to him, throw a drink on his face. Yeah. And so that's why. And again, you have to remember I was like 11 watching it, but I
think it hits different as a 35-year-old.
I always liked Randy. I always thought she was really funny. Yeah. And weirdly, my favorite bit of hers is when she's talking to one of the passengers and stuff. The passenger's worried. And she's like, there's no need, to be alarmed. And she turns around and just goes,
oh, yeah. It's the
like
one.
The most exaggerated.
It's the one where, like, Jim never has a second guy. Yeah. It's the wife. And she's like, did you both have the fish? And she's like, oh, yeah, of course we did. And that's when she's like, oh, no. But the wife never gets sick, which is
she doesn't.
Interesting to me.
Well, at least we don't see. But I also really love them trying to distract the passengers. And I am a stickler for the comedy rule of 3s, and this only happens twice, and I think that's right. I think that's the appropriate instinct. But them dragging the bodies to the back of the plane, while trying to distract the passengers, I really, really like that.
I do also love the commitment. I feel like they had to have had something underneath him to make it easier, but they were just like, Leslie Nielsen was dragging Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I was like, that man has to weigh so much. He's so tall.
So what did you think of Leslie Nielsen? He's not overused.
No,
there's not a lot.
So he's not overused in this, and it's good. I think I liked him. I also was looking at a couple of the pieces of trivia, and evidently this is like his first comedy role, which I had no idea. I thought he was a comedy
He's also
actor.
Playing the straight man in this.
And he's kind of playing the straight man. So it worked. He worked for me in this. I just I've seen a lot of clips and stuff from the Naked Gun movies, and I'm just like, it's such low-hanging fruit, and I feel... There are also movies where I feel like I missed the window to care.
That's perfectly fair.
You know what I mean? Like I missed the window for There's Something About Mary. I'm too old to watch that movie, and we're not in the right time for me to watch that movie.
But that is crude and offensive in a way that I think so. Like I can see how you might assume The Naked Gun might be, and certainly elements of it are. But I and this is actually the point I was about to make was I was like, you're like, that's really low hanging fruit, and fair, absolutely. But if it's low-hanging fruit packaged in sort of a light and charming package, does that aid the experience at all?
I mean, it definitely can. I do think that it's like I am past the point in my life where I can give those movies what they deserve. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's something that I'm going to try to do
If you want to be all in on Airplane, you need to see it before you're 20.
That's what I think. It's like there are movies that I'm all in on, and like one of them is our movie that we're all in on, and it's The Emperor's New Groove. And it's like, if I were watching The Emperor's New Groove for the first time at the age of 35, I don't think I'd get the same thing out of it that I did when I was
I think you'd get a lot
15.
out of it. You'd get a lot out of it.
But I think it wouldn't be the same like as when I saw when I was like 14, and it was like life-changing, and I've watched it like 50 times.
I wanted to read these two quotes, but the Rotten Tomatoes poll quote is, though unabashedly juvenile and silly, Airplane is nevertheless an uproarious spoof comedy full of quotable lines and slapstick gags that endure to this day. And then the second one was Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. He said, Airplane is sophomoric, obvious, predictable, corny, and quite often very funny. And the reason it is funny is frequently because it's sophomoric, predictable, corny, etc. And then the third one was Janet Maslin of the New York Times. She said, Airplane is more than a pleasant surprise. As a remedy for the bloated self-importance of too many other current efforts, it's just what the doctor ordered, which that is more so a phenomenon that I've been noticing a lot lately, where we have a tendency to think that the times that we're in are unique to us in these times. And I'm like, oh no, it's always been this way. Well, people have always complained about bloated blockbusters. And like,
I do love that she's just like the self-important movies of the 70s. You can hear her being like, cough, The Godfather, cough, cough. And I'm just like, it's funny.
So for the most part, I think that the movie is unoffensive sometimes in its offensiveness. I think it's light. I think it's very lighthearted. I think it's very silly.
Yeah, it is very
this
silly.
Goes hand in hand with the Muppets.
Sure.
And like,
I think the Muppets are,
there's a whimsy.
And this is just, it's like, I mean, there's a whole plane vomiting.
You've never been like passionate about spoof stuff.
No, not really. No.
Is it just because of the like, you're making fun of the thing? Like, well, I'm not impressed? Or
so a lot of it is because I generally like the thing. I'm generally like, I like that thing that you're making fun of, and you are picking the easiest joke. And that's what sort of, it's like, if you're going to make fun of it, at least make fun of something unique about it, you know?
I did do a little bit of Googling watching this, because again, 35, I first saw it 25 years ago. I was watching this and I was like, Leslie Nielsen's kind of handsome. And I Googled pictures of him when he was younger. And that was nice.
He's kind of a babe. I was sort of into Robert Stack in this movie.
You were, because his wife, or was she his wife? The woman is just feeling him up at the end?
The captain's wife. But she was just feeling up Robert Stack. And I was like, hey, we all would do it.
But that's kind of what
1980 Robert Stack.
The female representation. I think like, not even so much that it's not sexist, but it's like that they do allow women funny moments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because she's the one that's in bed with the horse. Yeah. And you were like, what? And I was like, she was sleeping with the horse. You're like, no, it's loud and clear. But this was the young Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, damn. Yeah, he looks like Daniel Craig in this one. Shit.
It's funny because I was watching this and it was pinging a little bit more. I was like, I mean, I've always been able to identify that he was a handsome human.
Slike, he's not just like a bridge troll. He's like an attractive person.
But
he's got a lot of bone structure.
It was working for me more. And I like ran the math and I was like, well, for starters, I'm 35.
Yeah.
And he was 54 in this movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that felt much older when I was 10 than it does now.
Well, it's also like a 1980 54 is a whole different beast than... Because what does that mean? He's born in 2026?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different animal than...
Well, especially men in 1980, because even, I don't remember his name, Ted Stryker. It's like, he could have been like anywhere between 28 and 50. I would have no idea.
Yeah.
Because Julie Hagerty, even though her hair really...
like, well, and hold on this first.
Yeah. It throws the monkey wrench into the system, but she has such a youthful... I love how funny she is with given so little deliberate comedy.
Yeah.
Because the one that got, and this is why I think you would appreciate it more on a second or third watch, is because you laughed significantly harder the second time that she reacted to the spit take than you did the first time.
Because of my mistake, 6 men didn't return from that raid.
7, Lieutenant Zip died this morning. But Dr. Sandler says she'll be out in a week. Isn't that wonderful?
The whole reason that was funny is because he was like, because of me, six men are dead.
Yeah.
And she just is like, 7, that George Zip died this morning. And he just is like, and her reaction is just like, oh.
Well, you don't even see, he's off screen too, which is not common for a spit take.
You just see the water and she's just like.
Well, she kind of backs away and then just continues with her.
She just does that Julie Hagerty face that she's so good at.
It's really very funny. Because you mentioned the autopilot, and I was like, that is very low-hanging fruit, that it looks like she's blowing the thing.
Well, and that was one of the jokes that I've seen since I was a child.
But also, I love the cut away, like after that scene where it cuts to, and she's in the passenger's or the driver's seat just smoking, just like.
Well, he's got a cigarette too.
Yeah, but it's like, she's just like.
It's not that satisfying to give a blowjob, is all I'm saying.
So I have nothing to say about that. I liked the children with the coffee. That was very very silly, and I was a little bit bummed that didn't come back in any way. I think that needed a second. I don't think it needed 3, but especially because the little kid, his face. I don't know how they got that little kid to make that face.
Well, they both were very precocious in a way that I was like, I wonder if they've done anything else, and I don't think they have. But they both were very. She was like, because he comes up with the coffee, right? And he's like, would you like a coffee? And she's like, oh, yes, thank you.
That would be very nice. Yeah. They're talking like adults.
And they just like sit there. And they're wearing like little power suits. And she's like, no, thank you. I take it black, like my men. And he just is like.
Cream? No, thank you. I take it black, like my men.
It's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm reaction that, again, I don't know what they said to that child to get that out of him.
That way, yeah. It's like when you think about Scream, where it's like the guy had to be on the phone telling Drew Barrymore about horrible things that happen to animals to make her cry.
Because he's like shocked and embarrassed, but also maybe a little bit impressed.
Intrigued.
Yeah, like he's kind of like I don't know, and I do agree with you where you were like, okay, bone in fish on an airplane. I think that was a prop choice. I think that was an art department choice to sell us on the fish.
But fish in the first place on a plane, it's chicken or beef. Chicken, beef, or vegetarian.
It's chicken on a plane. Yeah. There were so many people that were like, the fish.
Yeah, no.
It was the 80s. And it was like 1980, which is technically still the 70s.
It's not that I think that eating, like the act of eating fish on a plane would make you sick, but like, why are you cooking fish on a plane for everyone to smell?
It's a little bit like fast food seafood. It's like, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Like I said, by no means do I think this needs to be one of your movies, but if we get the opportunity to see it again,
sure,
particularly with a crowd, I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I'll go.
There's a second one that cannot be very good because even as a kid, I remember putting it on and kind of being like, okay, I'm done with this after 30 minutes. So if they go to the moon, they're like on a commercial flight to the moon. And so I think like if at like 12, I was like, I'm good.
A hard pass.
Then it probably doesn't quite. But so I guess the big question, you said you liked it fine.
Yeah.
Do you, two-parter, do you get its place in pop culture?
I got its place before I watched it. I understood.
And do you approve of?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just okay. So I'm getting ready to do this thing in the new year. I will have already started once this episode is out. I made myself a list on Letterboxd where I am trying to fill in the gaps in my movie knowledge because I haven't seen things like The Godfather. And even though it feels like it's going to be very tedious, I feel like I should. And I've never seen Citizen Kane and stuff like that. So I made myself this list, and that's what I'm going to try to do like in the new year is watch all these movies that I think I should have watched.
So is this one of them?
I don't think I had added it yet, but I'm probably going to now. I understand the cultural place that all these movies have because I have been alive in the world for 35 years and I have been a movie fan for roughly, like a big deal movie fan for roughly 20 of those years. So I always understand the place these movies have. It's more about just experiencing it, and it's usually more about whether or not I agree. I can agree that this fits, that this should be where it is, but it's also...
Or certainly in the vicinity.
Certainly in the vicinity, but I also... That's the thing is, like, I don't think I would think this is the funniest movie
the second greatest comedy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can't go that far. And it's just like...
But could you... but that's what I mean. It's like, would you agree that if being forced to compile a list of, like, greatest comedies of all time, that this is kind of a top 10 type?
Sure. If you're making the greatest comedies of all time, then yes. If you're asking me my favorite comedy movies, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's just like, that's
the issue I have with ranking things.
Yes.
Is I'm like, well, is it my favorite, or is it like the most respected, or is it the most culturally relevant?
Like, I'll tell you this right now. I'm going to try to get The Godfather out of the way relatively early in the year, so I don't have to keep thinking about it.
In theory, I want to see it, so maybe we can do it for this. Sure. Is that a January movie anybody is interested in? Yeah,
let us know if you want to hear about The Godfather. That's my thing. I already recognize its place in cinema. I know that it is considered one of the greatest movies of all time. I understand that. I don't think I'm gonna like it very much. You know what I mean? So it's like, in the spirit of that list, yes, I'm super glad I finally watched Airplane, because I had never seen it before. It was not my dad's sense of humor, so I would have never watched it at home, even if my mom wanted to watch it.
Did you know all of the jokes, or
most of them?
Most of them,
yeah,
okay.
Most of them, for sure.
It is ubiquitous, so.
Well, it was like, you remember like 10 years ago when AMC was always putting out those lists of like, these are the best comedies.
And the best horror films. Yeah. And those were so great because it would give you like 5 minutes of each movie.
So this was on the best comedies, and they just basically pulled out a greatest hits of almost everything. So yes. I mean, I didn't know about the little kids and, a couple things like that.
No, that's cool. But, that's cool. Okay. I'm pleased. I'm pleased with our outcome, so.
Okay, as always, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching or Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. We also have a website, soI'mWatching.com, which links out to everything. You can subscribe on YouTube by clicking right over here if you're watching, and you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And that's it for us. Bye.